Just 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, sure.
hello. Very good morning, all. You are very welcome at the Select Committee meeting on Public Infrastructure and Minister in the Presidency. Today, if you haven't noticed, it's the 26th of March, and we've got a one item on the agenda today that's very important. Just quickly run through the agenda. So we'll do apologies after this. We'll do introductions by the Select Committee members, and then the department, the minister is here. So Deputy Minister will do the introductions for us. We will do the introductory session with Transnet, the introduction to mandate divisions and historical attainment of performance targets. We'll do some questions and answers from the committee, and then committee members will do the consideration and adoption of the previous minutes, after which will be closure. Hopefully that'll take us to 1 o'clock, and as we all know, we've got a plenary at 2 o'clock, so let's not waste time and get straight into it. Are there any apologies? Mr. Ntalini?
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning, honorable members and colleagues. We have received one apology for Honorable Briette. She's attending the Social Services Committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ntalini. Honourable members, can we start in front here with the Chief Whip and just introduce yourselves, please? Thank you very much.
Good morning, Chair, honourable members, and a special word of greetings to the DM and the leadership of the Transnet. My name is Kenny Muimang, permanent delegate from the Northern Cape. Thank you, and a member of the committee.
Good morning, delegation. My name is Igor Skierkogel. I am a delegate, permanent delegate from the Free State.
Good morning, members. My name is Mandla Peter. I'm a permanent delegate representing Eastern Cape. Thank you.
Mandibulise igama lami ndingumandisa Makesini, permanent delegate from Free State. Enkosi.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, DM and the team. Good morning, honorable members. My name is Khanya Ceza. I hail from Mpumalanga Province as a permanent delegate. Thank you very much.
Sanibona nonke Jabulani Kanzimande, permanent delegate yangapha eGoli.
Thank you very much. My name is Rikus Bardnos. I chair this committee meeting, and with me is Dr. Anneke Clark. She's our content advisor, and on my left-hand side is Mr. Ntalini. He's our committee secretary. Deputy Minister, you are most welcome. Thank you very much for attending our meeting. I'll hand over to you to do the introductions. Thank you very much.
Chairperson, good morning to the honorable members of the portfolio of the Select Committee and your entire team. Chair, my name is Mkhuleko Hlengwa, the Deputy Minister of Transport. I would like to tender the apology of the Minister of Transport, who is in cabinet today, and so that is why she is not here. And we've got the DDG for rail on my right, Ubaba Ungwako Makaipea. And on my left, I've got the chairperson of the board, Babu Sangwe, and I'm now going to ask him to introduce his team, and then we will get into the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister, Honorable Chairperson of the Select Committee, and honorable members of the Select Committee. Good morning to you. My name is Andy Lesangu, the chairman of the Transnet board. I'm here today with, on my left, Michelle Phillips, who is a group chief executive officer of Transnet. Sitting next to her is Mr. Solile Tswalo, who is a Group Chief Operations Officer of Transnet Group. In the seat behind, on the left-hand side, is Ms. Nosipho Mapumulo. She is the Group Chief Financial Officer. Next to her is Sihle Kwanazi, who is the General Manager in the Office of the Chairman and the Group Chief Executive Officer. On my extreme right, we have Mr. Busisa Jia. He is a board member of Transnet, and he serves on the various committees of Transnet. We have behind me the group treasurer, Mr. Andre Pillay, who also is present with us. We also have the secretarial desk on the extreme left side, Shoki Bupape, and I think with Ms. Molatela Motsepo, who also is part of the Department of Transport. So that chairperson completes the delegation. I hope I have counted everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else we missed? I know PMG is here. You're very welcome. Thank you for attending. Anybody else that we've missed? No? Thank you very much. Honourable members, so Transnet is a new addition to our portfolio. This Select Committee's portfolio. In the previous administration, the sixth administration, I think Transnet fell under public works. Public enterprises. They are now part of our portfolio. So Transnet will today brief the Select Committee on its mandate and strategic direction as executed by its 7 divisions. The Transnet Rail Infrastructure Management Division has cross-cutting importance for passenger rail transport, as well as because PRASA, as you know, use the long-distance passenger services are operated on the Transnet infrastructure. The Select Committee will also, in its engagement with PRASA, we've also learned with the engagement with PRASA recently that the restoration of the Durban-Stanger strategic corridor in KwaZulu-Natal is very dependent on the recovery of Transnet's infrastructure there. The Select Committee is already, in its engagement with the Transnet Port Terminal and the National Ports Authority divisions at the Durban Port last year, stressed the need for Transnet to position itself to ensure that export market client needs are met. And I think it's really a big gap at the moment. The Citrus Growers Association of Southern Africa this week, as in the past week, has announced its readiness for the official start of the citrus season in April 2025. And the question is whether our freight logistics network and ports are equally ready for that. Today, Transnet will also reflect on its historical, operational and financial performance, as well as its reinvent for growth turnaround strategy that is already reported to be yielding some improvements, which is encouraging. The engagement of Transnet happens against the backdrop of significant steps towards opening up the South African freight logistic network to private sector participation, with the Minister of Transport also this week announcing the publication of a request for information, or RFI, for potential private sector participation in key projects, including the following: the Northern Cape to Saldanha Bulk Minerals Corridor, the Limpopo and Mpumalanga to Richards Bay Bulk Minerals Corridor, and port, container and automotive port terminals, back of port arrangements, and railway and inland terminals for the Gauteng Durban Port, KZN, Gauteng Eastern Cape, East London, Port Elizabeth and Kura, and Gauteng Western Cape, Cape Town corridors. This is indeed significant, this announcement, and we're looking forward to seeing how that announcement is going to play into the strategic plan of Transnet going forward. The Select Committee will maintain oversight over key milestones announced as part of the RFI publication, including the commencement of the procurement phase from the end of August 2025 onwards, and the publication of a RFI focused on passenger rail, which is going to happen in May 2025. And with that, Minister, I'd like to hand over to you and your department for your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson. Not to do your job, I did see that you've got one member you missed, the Honourable Kaunda, who did not introduce himself for the benefit of Transnet. And Chair, to indicate that Sismulate, who's at the back, is the Chief Director for Public Entity Oversight in the department. Chair, I think maybe one will build on the opening remarks that you have made and indicate that yes, the Minister has published the RFI, and it is our hope that we're going to receive favorable submissions in that regard as part and parcel of the broader turnaround strategy that we seek to introduce within the department and our entities. And I'm pretty certain that at an appropriate time, the department will be in a position to brief the committee further on the construct, context, and outlook which we have with publishing that RFI. Chair, it is, of course, a privilege again for us to be here in what I can term for the committee Transnet 101, and hope that the entity with the board will be in a position to brief you adequately, as you have also indicated that this transfer of the department and our entities to yourselves arises out of the disestablishment of the Department of Public Enterprises. We received Transnet in the family of Transport in August 2024 alongside SAA, and so it is also for us requiring certain changes, and we'll be getting new staff and having to build up new capacity within the department, and hence the DDG of Rail is here, of which whom it's his branch that has got direct line of sight within the department of the work that Transnet is doing, including PRASA and the rail safety regulator. So, Chair, with that background, it remains our outlook that Transnet's strategic importance cannot be overstated. Our national economic prosperity is closely tied to the efficiency and resilience and sustainability of our transportation systems, including that of the work being done by Transnet. Transnet's unique infrastructure portfolio encompasses a comprehensive mix of rail, port, and pipeline assets, all of which serve as South Africa's backbone logistics and trade ecosystem. The company's core mandate is clear. It is to lower the cost of doing business in South Africa, drive economic growth, and ensure security of supply. It is tasked with providing world-class port, rail, and pipeline infrastructure and services in an efficient, cost-effective, and globally competitive manner aligned with international best practice. However, Chairperson, despite its strategic importance, Transnet has faced formidable challenges in recent years. A combination of operational inefficiencies, financial constraints, and external economic pressures has muted its contribution to economic growth. These challenges necessitated the implementation of a comprehensive recovery plan aimed at reversing declining volumes, stabilizing performance, and restoring financial sustainability. Notably, within the first 6 months of implementation, the recovery plan managed to arrest the decline of operational performance. The Transnet of yesterday is not the Transnet of today. There is improvement, and that improvement will continue. However, Chairperson, further, these inefficiencies we referred to have led to a weakened financial position and threatens the long-term sustainability of Transnet. In response, government has introduced policy measures and regulatory reforms designed to enhance the efficiency and competitiveness of the broader transport and logistics sector. These interventions are not merely remedial, but forward-looking and transformative, ensuring that the sector is well positioned to drive economic growth and enable industrial expansion. I do want Chairperson to not delve much into what the presentation will cover. However, I think it is important that insofar as Transnet's financial position is concerned, indicate that it requires urgent attention to address its debt and ensure long-term sustainability. Its financial position declined over time, despite the organization generating slightly higher revenue, which has increased from approximately 72.9 billion to 76.7 billion between 2017-18 and 23-24. Whilst over the same period, operating expenses have increased from 40.4 billion to 54.7 billion. The combined impact of the muted increase in group revenue and significant increase in operating expenses has resulted in lower operating profits, as reflected by the decline in the expenses before interest and taxes, from 32.5 billion to 22 billion. The inability to improve profitability has resulted in Transnet increasing its borrowing between 2017-18 and 23-24, which grew from approximately 123 billion to 138 billion. Transnet's operational performance has declined over the years to a level that is not sustainable for business continuity and resulting in untenable debt levels. The deterioration in performance is mainly driven by a shortage of locomotives, deteriorating infrastructure, and equipment unavailability. Transnet's constrained financial profile has in part led to the introduction of several policy measures through the National Rail Policy, Freight Logistics Roadmap, Economic Regulation of Transport Act, Ports Act, and the National Treasury Guarantee Framework conditions to drive change within the transport and logistics environment with an aim of stimulating performance and economic growth. These policy reforms also aim to modernize infrastructure, improve operational efficiency and increase capacity, promote sustainable practices, and drive sustainable growth. The changes have a positive impact on the broader logistics sector, such as increased transparency, sector reform, increased regulation, competition, industry efficiency, and the sustainability, improved investment and collaboration. They include revitalizing the rail network through rail reform to address significant challenges that have hampered the effectiveness of South Africa's rail network. The rail reform is driven by the need, Chair, to attend to the significant challenges that have hampered the effectiveness of South African rail network. The formation of the Transnet Rail Infrastructure Manager, TRIM, represents the changing business and legislation landscape in the country's freight systems. Again, through the Reinvent for Growth strategy, Transnet aims to resolve operational challenges and transform the business to achieve sustainable growth into a dynamic and competitive environment. Further, the National Logistics Crisis Committee, which is made up of government agencies, state-owned entities, and business, enables a coordinated response to the challenges of the freight logistics system. Chairperson, I would want to at the outset invite the Select Committee, just like the Portfolio Committee has done, to visit Transnet and its business units. It was the observation of the Portfolio Committee on the various tour sites that they did, that the committee observed that the most facilities they engaged with, they were impressed and engaged with employees who are the backbone of Transnet, with a strong and lasting and positive impression of a workforce that is committed to turning the entity around. It remains the general sentiment that Transnet was heard, that we have heard about, is not the Transnet that was seen. Further, Chairperson, the success of Transnet's transformation hinges on strategic partnerships, as you've already pointed out, through the public-private partnerships and the private sector participation. The organization is engaging with industry players to unlock investment opportunities and drive efficiencies. With that, Chair, I would like to hand over to the Chairperson of the Board of Transnet and his team, who will now take you through what I believe is a very comprehensive presentation which will enable the committee to gain the broadest of insights in terms of the work that has been done. All I can say, Chair, is that the ministry and the department working with Transnet, we are hard at work to turn the situation around for the better, and I think that we've already began seeing the impact in the right trajectory in the work that Transnet is actually doing. Thank you very much. Chairperson, over to you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister. Once again, may I just stand on the protocols that have been observed. I just think that as I kick off, just to say that we are meeting here today on the 26th of March at a time when we are nearing the end of the 31 March financial year end for Transnet. And this moment is coming at a time when we have been busy with a recovery plan that was approved by the board on the 14th of October 2023. And I must say that we've really come a long way from where we were in October 2023. And we have made formidable strides since then. The situation back in 2023 was far different from where it is today. As some of you may recall, that back in 2023, we had a different executive leadership than what you see today. We also had very bad relationships with customers back in 2023. We were also in the media every day, all for the bad reasons. Some of you may recall that in 2023, we were making front pages in newspapers such as the Sunday Times with allegations such as the ghost trains that were operating in Transnet. Back in 2023, the performance of the company, both financially and operationally, was plummeting. I think this is the backdrop and the historical context within which we should keep in mind as we look and reflect on the progress to date. A lot has changed since then. We have recruited a new executive team under the leadership of Michelle Phillips, and the number of key appointments that have been made since then. And the latest of those has been the recent appointment of the Chief Executive for Transnet Engineering and the Chief Executive of Transnet Rail Infrastructure. We are still without the Chief Executive of TNPA. This is the matter that is exercising the mind of the board as well as the executives to try and find a way of resolving this matter. And indeed, it is something that is getting priority. We have started in earnest with the structural reform program for the reasons that have been mentioned here, where there is a deliberate and an intentional policy approved by Cabinet to drive structural reform, where Transnet, together with other operators, are able to be the vehicles and the platform for moving goods from the pit, as we say, to the port. And in that regard, one of the institutions or organizations that we have set up is a Transnet Rail Infrastructure Manager, which is a division of Transnet, but in the fullness of time, it will become a fully fledged subsidiary of Transnet. We have also issued a network statement which outlines the roadmap of how private sector participation is to take place in our platform. And part of that package also talks to the tariffs that will then be applicable to the various operators. Thirdly, we are about to announce any minute now a decision of going to market for our leasing company, which will then provide a platform for the train operators to be able to lease rolling stock in the form of locomotives as well as wagons. Honorable Chair and members of the Select Committee, I'm sharing this so that you can, at least at a 30,000 feet kind of level, have a view as to the direction that the structural reforms are taking. On the operational reform side, as the Deputy Minister has said, the volumes are starting to pick up. And even though we may have fallen short of some of the targets that we have set for ourselves in terms of where we would want it us to be by the end of the financial year. But I'm happy to say that the Transnet of today is not the Transnet of yesterday. And whatever it is that we've been able to achieve, we've been able to consolidate by putting in place the kind of processes, systems, the discipline, and also addressing some of the issues that brought us here. One of them, you would recall, we had a big issue around some of the locomotives. We used to call them 1064 CRRC locomotives. The story covered the newspapers and it seized the nation for a long time, except to say that we have found a step-in OEM who has been part and parcel of doing reverse engineering of some of those locos and also stepped up the production of new locos. And all of those initiatives are beginning to bear fruit in the sense that part of the operational recovery in the volumes is underpinned by the introduction into service of new locomotives, which then gives us the confidence and the assurance that the level that we have covered is indeed sustainable. We have also been working very collaboratively and closely with the National Logistics Crisis Committee, which has been very helpful in bringing in insight and technical support. And we have established the operational excellence centers, and all of these are across the various operating nodes. And the Group Chief Operation Officer will go into some detail, illuminating the eyes of the committee and the chair in terms of how far we have gone. That's on the good side. But despite all of this progress that we have made, we still have concerns. Our cost base as a business is not where we would like it to be. Some of these issues are historical in nature, in the sense that we are sitting with an overhead structure that far exceeds what we need to run the business profitably with sufficient responsiveness and agility. So there is some work that is being undertaken in the form of an organizational review, which means that we'll have to have a structure that is fit for purpose. We're also busy with technical assessments of some of our critical corridors, and we are busy with some funding arrangements. The Deputy Minister did say that our balance sheet is constrained. We do not have the scope and the capability of introducing new equity or cash in the business to help it to be more capitalized. So in this regard, we are looking at innovative ways of financing, which include cooperation with our customers. And I'm sure the group chief executives will speak more to that. On the issues of safety, safety remains our concern in the business. We're not proud of our safety record, and this is something that we are working on timelessly, and we are seized with this issue. Let me say to you, Honorable Chair and honorable members, for us to enable the participation of third parties into the network, we need to fix it first. It is not in a condition as we speak where it can really be operated safely, reliably, and efficiently. So there is a need to inject at least 15 billion rand per network over a period of 3 years. And we've got two critical networks that we need this for, which is the ore corridor network and the coal or a core network. So between those two, over a period of 3 years, 30 billion rand is required. The organization chairperson and honorable members of the committee, we are battling with cable theft and derailments. And derailments, in large measure, has a lot to do with the quality of the track, but cable theft is out of control. Despite the measures that we have taken as an organization to deal with this, we need help. We need the help of SAPS, we need the help of everyone to help us to deal with this. And also we need the help of the communities to help us to deal with this. I'm going to end, Chairperson, by saying that we do believe that we've reset the base for Transnet. And I know people talk about green shoots, but we think that with the new base, we have a better starting point for building the future of Transnet. Thanks very much. I'm now going to hand over to Michelle to elaborate and provide more context and content to some of the issues that I have touched upon. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. Michelle, just in terms of time management, if we can conclude by 11 o'clock to give the committee enough time to engage with questions and answers. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Honourable Chair. Thank you very much, honourable members. Thank you. We appreciate the opportunity to be able to engage with the committee. I will do exactly that, Chairperson. I think between the Deputy Minister and the Chairperson, quite a bit has been covered. There is some detail or some salient, I think, aspects that I would touch on, but not necessarily go through the entire presentation, so we move through that. I would also like to say that, yes, PowerPoint is PowerPoint. As the Deputy Minister indicated, there's probably a lot more that can be learned by the committee when you visit our operations to actually, almost walk in the shoes of our people. And we would be willing to, of course, we would invite you to join us so that we can take you through all of that. The 7 operating divisions, I want to draw your attention purely to, if we look at on the left-hand side, we have recently separated the infrastructure from the operations in line with the Freight Logistics Roadmap and the reforms. So you'll see that Transnet Rail Infrastructure Manager, new operating division, now responsible for the management and maintenance, making sure that this network is kept up to standard. About 30,000 kilometers of track that needs to be maintained, and of course also responsible for ensuring the access of private train operators to our network. Transnet Freight Rail essentially now becomes the operating company, the organization that would be responsible for the movement of commodity through with rolling stock locomotives and wagons on that network, and then also for the time being operating the Blue Train, and then we also have our flagship corporate social investment initiative, the PEPA train, which is the healthcare train that we use along the South African, along the country to all of the different areas to ensure that our communities are able to access healthcare. Engineering, responsible for the maintenance of that rolling stock, largely servicing the freight rail. I think what is also important for the committee, Transnet Port Terminals, where we've done quite a lot of work of late in terms of renewing of the fleet. You can see there's 16 cargo terminals and 68 berths that are operated, and of course under the oversight of the National Ports Authority. And then we have the pipelines divisions, which is responsible for the movement of liquid fuels using the multi-product pipeline from Durban to Gauteng. We import majority of the product now into the country, which is a change, I think, in the last 2 years with the loss of refining capacity in South Africa. We now are importing most of the product, and that is moving through what we call the multi-product pipeline from Durban to Gauteng. So this particular division, we keep what we say, we keep Gauteng wet, because if we don't move that product, again, the impact on the economy will be quite catastrophic. And then we have a property division, about 8.5 billion rands worth of assets. On this one specifically, also as part of our self-help initiative, it is a division right now, but we are also in the process of disposal of what we call non-core properties to assist us with our financial position. We can go to the next slide. Again, this is a detail of that to indicate the, let's say, the size of the monster. It's quite big. It's a complex network and it's a big business. As at the end of the last financial year, we were sitting with about 51,000 employees. Of course, employees that we would, as far as possible, want to keep in employment so that we don't contribute to the unemployment rate in the country. And you can see the size of the asset base, 364 billion. I'm not going to go through all the details here. I'll pick up on the main ones. You see the commercial footprint, 8 commercial ports, 16 cargo terminals. We've got maintenance depots across the country, engineering yards, and of course also manufacturing facilities that we are occupying at the moment. You'll see that out of Durban, we have again started manufacturing locomotives for use on the network. You can see the pipeline infrastructure, 3,000 kilometers thereabouts. It is both the NMPP line, and then we also have the gas pipeline that operates from Secunda to Empangeni to Durban, and then plans in the future is to also convert that into an LNG pipeline. I've spoken to the property portfolio. Let's go to the next slide. I don't want to go through too much except to emphasize again the mandate. The Deputy Minister was quite clear, and we take this mandate very seriously. We have to lower the cost of doing business, and we can do that by enabling economic growth, but also ensuring that our people are efficient and that we run a cost-effective and efficient operation. We want to provide appropriate ports to enable imports and exports of commodities, and of course ensuring security of supply across the network. That then finds expression in the statement of our strategic intent. We want to improve competitiveness. We believe that in that way we will be a more productive system, and that the entire system will then move in terms of this target that we have of 250 million tons by collaborating with the private sector, allowing private access. Of course, we want to run a clean business. We come from quite a difficult past. We do not want to go back there. And certainly as a leadership team, we are very firm on good ethics and running honest and clean business. And ultimately, we believe that by applying this and by exercising these values, that we will grow market share and then also ultimately ensure the financial sustainability of Transnet. These slides here are purely to indicate the leadership. What you see in front of you is the board. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you can see the chairperson is here, Mr. Gia is here. We also have Professor Mufamadi, we've got Lebo Letswalo, Deepak Patel, Ms. Sedopani, and I just know Pearl. Yes, Ms. Zambani, there's the name. Let's move. This is the executive leadership team led by myself. Of course, next to me here is Mr. Letswalo. Mr. Letswalo occupies the position of operating officer. This is a position, chairperson, that we've had to revive. This position, for whatever reason, was dissolved. And as part of our recovery plan, I felt very strongly that to get the necessary focus on operations improvement, it is important that we revive this, and I'm pleased to say that, as the chairperson have indicated, we have seen the improvements in the operations, which we'll talk to. You see the various positions there that are filled. I won't go through the details of all of them. Some of them are present here. Next slide. These are the people that report to Mr. Letswalo. They are essentially the chief executives of the various operating divisions. There is only one position, and it was very important for us to get stability in leadership. There is only one position right now that is of an acting nature, and in that position, again, us wanting to ensure that we run a clean business, we have had to suspend quite a few people within the Transnet National Ports Authority. As we speak, the chief executive of the Transnet National Port Authority is on suspension, and Advocate Defeto has taken the reins as acting chief executive for the time being, whilst we are in the process of finalizing that matter. Of course, depending on how the matter proceeds, we would be at some point when it's concluded, have a full permanent structure. Let's move. Next slide. I'm not going to go through too much of these things. I think the committee will be aware of the challenges. The high debt we've spoken about, it is strangling us. We are really struggling with the debt and the interest costs. As we earn more revenue, unfortunately, a lot of it is eaten up by finance costs in interest that we have to pay. The market share, have been declining. As we speak, the network continues to decline. And we have to obviously make good with what we have to be able to keep this network going so that we have uninterrupted movement of cargo. Maintenance backlog, unfortunately, I think with past practices that have not necessarily, allocated or utilized funds as they should have, we sit with a situation where this network is now in a state and we have to catch up. Of course, that has impacted our ability to move volumes, particularly on rail, resulted in a lot of volumes moving onto road, and there again, for us to make sure that we get that back so that the freight rail division is able to work efficiently. And then, we talked about what we call an ineffective debt of about 60 billion during the period 11-12 to 18-19, essentially monies that were borrowed, Chairperson, intended for assets that we were supposed to use in this network. Those assets we do not have. Essentially, money has been borrowed, but not utilized for the purpose intended. We have to pay back that money. And that's what we refer to as 60 billion rand of ineffective debt. We'll move to the next slide. Not to repeat, but I think network vandalism and theft for us, a big one. We continue to work with with all of the authorities, in fact, crime intelligence, the prosecuting authorities, the private security companies, our own security, trying to ensure that we have an uninterrupted flow of commodities, but it is a very difficult battle and we continue to struggle with that on a daily basis. Not only on the rail side, but also on the pipeline network, although I have to say we have been quite successful on the pipeline side in terms of preventing this type of activity. In the ports, you would have heard and you would have seen the efficiency challenges because of the equipment. However, in terms of moving forward, we'll talk to Chairperson mentioned about the readiness for the fruit season. We will talk to what we've already done in terms of renewing of the fleet so that we are, in fact, ready for the fruit season. Let's move. So, Chairperson, what this slide is intended to indicate, the committee wanted to understand our performance over in the past. You'll see that in 17-18, Transnet operated at a peak of 226.3 million tons on the network. The decline, in fact, started, you could say, in 2018-19. It's not, in fact, a decline that started during the COVID years. I have to say, it started quite before that. And you can see the volumes decline year on year. Of course, during COVID, quite a big decline. But then in 22-23, Transnet ended at its lowest point at 149.5. Of course, that then, you heard the chair talk about the noise around the performance of this organization. We immediately had to come together as a team and decide how is it that we are going to arrest that decline. And in October, we started working on the recovery plan, which was then approved by the board shortly thereafter, and we immediately commenced with the implementation of that plan. One of the things that we had to do is to, again, ensure that all efforts are focused on operations improvement. We do not make money if we don't move volumes and if we don't move them efficiently. We've had to go to our customers. We've had to work on the relationships with our customers. We had to go to our funders and work on the relationships with our funders. And fortunately, across the board, the industry was quite clear that they were willing to assist in whatever way possible. And that, again, we do not make promises that we cannot keep, but certainly that they would come to the party. And I have to say, across the board, since we've implemented this recovery plan, that is exactly what has happened. We went to the market, and our commitment was, you will not be worse off than the previous year. And fortunately, within the 6 months, we were able to arrest that decline. When the experts came to see us and they modeled the performance, the message to Transnet was, if you continue on this trajectory, you will end up between 139 and 142 million tons. And you can see that we ended the last financial year just short of 152 million tons. That was compared to a target at the time that we had of 154 million tons. And, we were probably going to meet the 154, But towards the end of the financial year, around about January, we had a very big derailment on the coal line, which in 1 week wiped out 1 million tons. And that's the extent of when we have derailments, when we have the theft and vandalism that causes the derailments, it wipes out big chunks out of the volumes that we need to move. So protecting this network has to be of utmost importance, of critical importance to everybody in the country. The target there for 24-25, we've set ourselves of 170 million tons, and you can see that it is quite a steep target when compared to the actual performance of 23-24. We have a slide later on that gives you the audited, or well, the interim results that we ended up with in June. However, we have already surpassed the prior year number by quite I think we're about 10 million tons, almost there above now. Well, we think we'll end up on the 160 million tons, which is about 9 million tons above where we were last year, and short of the recovery plan target. But I think what is important here is that as a business, we can directly indicate to you firmly where those tonnages may have been lost. So we continue to work towards these targets, and of course our target for the new financial year 25-26 is on a 180 million ton number, bearing in mind the challenge that we have through the Freight Logistics Roadmap and from the Minister of Transport, that the South African network needs to deliver 250 million tons by 2030. We have to say that that target has to be an SA Inc. target. It cannot be a Transnet target. It has to be an SA Inc. target, and that is why all of these reforms are being implemented. Let's move to the next slide. I'm going to very quickly hand over to Nosipho. Can you do the financials? Yes. We've got like 2 minutes.
Good morning, Committee Chair and honorable members. Thanks again for the opportunity. So 2 minutes that I have, I'll talk maybe for a minute on the historical context, which has been covered by the previous speakers to a large degree. I think the significant numbers that I want to talk to is A, the revenue, which the Deputy Minister spoke to. The revenue, you can see, has been growing over time, albeit at a very low rate. But what you see between the revenue and the EBITDA will be a picture that shows the operating expenditure. And therefore, with the growth in operating expenditure, you'll see that EBITDA has been reducing over a period of time. In addition to that, if you look at the bottom picture, it shows the borrowings that Transnet has had to do. But I think the big issue with the borrowings is that a lot of it actually happened between 2011 and 2016-17. So we moved from a level of 60 billion in 2011 to 135 billion in 2016-17. Now, between then and now, we've actually grew our debt in a very small way, relatively speaking, to the period earlier than that. So between 2016 and 2024, our debt grew from 135 to 138. So that's a small growth in that period of time. But however, because you're carrying this debt burden on your balance sheet, what happens is that it eats up into your operating profits. Therefore, at the end of the day, then you end up with either a very suppressed profitability, bottom line, or a loss if you are not generating sufficient operating profit because of the extent of the financing cost. So, for example, if I just talk to the numbers of your financing costs in the period, So in 2011, it was 3.7 billion. It has grown to the levels of above 16 billion up to 2024, and this year, a similar period. So with that, it then is very clear that we have not been able to be in a position to do net repayment of debt. We have been refinancing existing debt, but not with huge numbers in the period. So if we go then to the next slide. Okay, thank you.
Vuyiswa, for Chair, in the interest of time, I'm going to move to slide 17. Yes. So all the slide seeks to show, Chairperson, is that our focus has been fix and optimize the business in terms of the recovery plan, optimizing and enhancing what we have, doing the best with what we have, improving on recovering of volumes, as we've shown, and making sure that we drive commercial returns across the operations. Of course, we are now seeking to transform, aligning to all of the policy changes, making sure that we implement the reform. The RFIs that the Minister has advertised all form part of this, and we are working very well with the department on this to ensure that we implement the policy as approved by government. And then, of course, we want to grow our business. Let's go to the next slide. I've got 4 minutes. Yeah, that basically...
Chair, if I may beg your indulgence, if we can just ask maybe for 5 additional minutes to 10, I think we will not do justice to... Okay, thanks, Chair. So just...
You can see I'm moving like a high-speed train. Yeah, so our objective is, of course, to improve our sustainability. This debt needs to be serviced. And we're figuring out all sorts of ways to try and service this debt, and of course ensuring that we are investing in the right areas. This is how we are approaching our strategy as we move forward to a space where we do find ourselves generating the kind of returns that government expects from us going forward. So, of course, we want to increase the flow of profitable services. When we talk about profitable services, Chairperson, there are those services that we provide for the benefit of SA Inc. that may not be profitable to Transnet as an organization itself. But those flows are very important, and we need to figure out how best do we ensure, whether it be through private sector participation, how best do we ensure that all of these flows work for the country ultimately, and not necessarily that it needs to be profitable from a Transnet perspective. Our purpose is to seek to ensure that the network in the country works for the benefit of the country as a whole. We can move, Vuyiswa. I don't want to go through all of this, but what this is essentially what the infrastructure manager represents, how this in the journey that it intends to follow, and the kind of the themes and the business requirements that the infrastructure manager is expected to address. We can move. I think this one also again indicates the importance of these interventions and how it will support our volume recovery. I think the next one, important, what we intend to show here, again, fixing and optimizing the business, how these volumes have moved, but you can see the plan in terms of moving forward, our contribution to the volume movements, but then also where we expect the private sector to take us to beyond to the 250s and beyond. So our strategy remains to improve the service execution, restore our efficiency, make sure that we are competitive, and that we are enabling the reforms. Chair, on the operational efficiency, I want to make specific mention. One, as I've indicated, we have started manufacturing locomotives out of the factory in Durban. For this financial year, that workshop has delivered. We had planned 47 locomotives. I think we've delivered 45 new locomotives that we are introducing into the system. Because, Chairperson, you've raised the issue of the citrus growers. I think maybe let me end on that good note. I know there's a bit more in the presentation. I attended the Citrus Growers Summit about 2 weeks ago, and was able to present to them the plans that we have. We have gone on quite a bit of a buying spree, I would call it, because the renewal of the fleet within the port should have happened some years ago. We've had to work with speed with our customers, with the OEMs, to get the equipment into the system. For 24-25, we've invested about 3.4 billion rand. We are beginning to see that equipment now coming into the system. Last month, we launched the 9 new straddle carriers that had just been assembled in the Port of Durban. We had also launched the new rubber-tied gantry cranes. 20 new straddle carriers in the Port of Durban. The first 8 we launched. And then at the Pier 1 container terminal, we are in the process of building the first 9 rubber-tied gantries. 16 of them will be coming into the system this year in Pier 1 container terminal in Durban. In the Western Cape specifically, we have in the last financial year 2 reach stackers, 47 haulers and trailers, and then we have rubber-tied gantries on the shore at the moment, 28 of them coming into the system. We will be launching that as soon as it arrived. The first 9 has arrived now, end of March. We will be starting to assemble them and then moving that into the system. For Port Elizabeth, very critical, particularly for the citrus growers. For the first time, I think I've been in transit for 25 years, it's the first time that we are actually giving them a new ship-to-shore crane, also to assist, and then we will also be giving them 12 straddle carriers in the new year. So all of that is intended for the ports to be able to also contribute towards the movement of commodities in the system. I'm going to end it there, if in order, Deputy Minister. There's a lot more, but I think as you engage with us in our operations, you'll be able to, physically see the kind of things that we are talking about addressing. Deputy Minister, hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, and thanks to the Chair, the CEO, the CFO for that presentation. I'm sure, Chair, that in the interactive session, some of the issues will be lifted out. But, Chair, I think it would probably be remiss of me at the outset not to point to another important aspect linked to the work that Transnet has to do in the broader scheme of things. It is of critical importance to us that we get Transnet operational in the manner in which we envisage, particularly in the context of the road to rail, as part of decongesting our roads, particularly if you look at the heightened numbers of trucks. Chairperson and colleagues, we remain fundamentally concerned as the department about the high road fatalities and the accidents that we witness on our roads and losing lives. And we would want to ask the committee to join us in public education and public awareness about the importance of road safety. We are currently in a season of high travel. If you look at the long weekends that we have, and with the Easter weekend coming up. So in the mix of that is ensuring that we are able to fast track the work at Transnet so that we can reduce the number of trucks generally on our roads, so that we can manage a free, fair flow of traffic on our roads. And so we work with Transnet that in the ecosystem, these are also part of the challenges that we seek to mitigate against. And Chair, to say we must be worried when the World Health Organization says South Africa is number 5 in the world in terms of alcohol consumption, because then it leads to drinking and driving, drinking and walking. 41% of our fatalities are pedestrians. Now, when you place that kind of driver behavior and pedestrian behavior on our roads arising out of all these problems in the face of trucks, which currently are on our roads. We are in dire straits. And so that is why it's not just about the issues that have been raised, it's also a societal issue. And to say, Chair, of course, the more accidents we have, you place a higher strain on the road accident fund, which, well, I can say that does not need more accidents. So thank you very much to the chairperson and the executives of Transnet. Chair, we are in your hands.
Thank you very, very much. Edward Phillips, thank you so much. You steamrolled through that presentation. Honourable members, you did receive the presentation in good time, so I think we'll all appreciate the fact that we had time to engage with the presentation before the meeting. But thank you nonetheless for being so good with time management. I'd like to go over to our Q&A. As per usual, honourable members, if I can just request that we engage on the presentation that we've received. There's a lot of other things we can engage on, but let's stick to the presentation for today, as it is an introductory meeting. If we can stick to our 3-minute rule, and then if we can do that, then obviously I'll try and allow that we do a Q&A session and not a lot of questions and a lot of answers. So we'll do ask and answered, if you don't mind. Thank you very much. Who's first? Honourable Kaunda, I recognize you. Thank you. You weren't here when we welcomed all the members. And I just want to note that Honourable Molokome made apologies for the meeting. I've received that as well, just for the record. Let's start with Honourable Nzimande. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. Mine are very simple, and I know they will be answered in a minute. Don't you think, Deputy Minister, part of the challenges that you may be facing may be emanating on the restrictive provisions on the national rail policy in relation to the role of the state, because it seems to be much more biased to the private capital. Don't you think that's the case, and it may need to be definitely be reviewed? Then that's the first part. The second part relates then to a question of extension of your responsibilities outside of the normal and traditional arrangement that was created by apartheid. Because the growth now, it's no more in line only on how the towns and cities used to perform. There are small towns and rural areas also that we'll have to look into, so that we deal with a number of issues that affects the people, including the cost and other things. Don't you think there must be an extension? And if there is, what is the plan for small towns and rural areas? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Nzimande. Honourable Deputy Minister, over to you and the team. Thank you.
Well, I think, Chair, more pointedly, the RFIs we are putting out are and the PSP unit, which the department has set up with DBSA, is primarily for the purpose of ensuring that we have multiple players to maximize and leverage on the available skills, knowledge, and expertise and resources within the ecosystem. And secondly is to indicate that the state remains the owner of the infrastructure, primarily to ensure that we can be able to have the necessary agility within the ecosystem. And so I believe that the work that is being done places the state at the center of making key strategic decisions. I think there's been an improvement of the performance of Transnet, as the chairperson and the CEO has said. Moreover, we have brought in the necessary infrastructure and continue to do so to ensure that there is heightened efficiency within Transnet's operations. So I would certainly not want to say that there's restrictions which are unfavorable. What we need to guard against is the state losing its centrality in the ownership of the infrastructure. And I think that the chair of the board has indicated that we need about 15 billion rands over an MTF period per line in order to make sure that it is able to function. Well, on the second issue around spatial planning and the realities brought on our country by apartheid, it's very clear, obviously, that the road to rail agenda is in part trying to respond to that, because we have got workers not in the economic centers of operation and work. And so when you look at what PRASA is doing, 31 of the 40 lines that have been opened, is to ensure that we are able to get South Africans to and from economic activity efficiently. It is not a desirable reality, but it's one that we have. How do we put money then back in the pockets of the passengers? And it's important that we focus on that. But above and beyond it, I would want to believe a broader responsibility of government to ensure that there is centers of economic activity within townships, within the areas at the peripheral spaces of productivity work. Small town revitalization, mining town revitalization are all of critical importance in this regard. You would have heard in the budget that there is a heavy investment on the signaling to ensure that we are able to move our trains quicker and faster for the purposes of commuters, students, people seeking employment, and so on. And so Transnet as well, therefore, amongst others, as the chair has again said, is to ensure that from pit to port we are able to do that speedily. We have got targets, country targets that we have set, and I would want to believe that all of that, what it seeks to do is grow the economy, reduce the cost of doing business, but also strategically locate Transnet and South Africa as the logistics hub of choice in the SADC region, if you consider the fact that we are competing with Walvis Bay and Mozambique. And so part and parcel of the work we are doing is about the strategic hold that South Africa must have in the region. And then, of course, working in collaboration with other industry players, such as the trucking industry. If you look at the work we're doing with the cross-border transport agency and the work that means our trucks travel all the way up to the DRC and Angola, where is the regional integration? There you're looking at the Africa Free Trade Agreement. So all in all, Transnet is strategic in us not just achieving South Africa's strength, but also ensuring regional consolidation of logistics and freight for all of us. So I don't believe that there are restrictions. In fact, I believe that we are tending to lean on the side of ensuring that the state does not lose its autonomy in holding the strategic importance, whilst at the same time opening up, as you've also rightly pointed to, Chair, the RFI and the PSP unit. And again, the invitation to the public, let us use the opportunity that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Zamandi. Are you covered by that?
Now maybe the chair of the board wants to deal with the first one proper, because I was just dealing with the issue that I understand that it sounds like, in terms of the policy, the state is an enabler through the infrastructure, but not playing an active role. I'm saying an investment, if you look, this policy is biased to a private capital. In a developmental state, there must be an active participation. I was just asking within that context, but if the DM will only answer in that context, I will just bow.
Chair, if I may, I think where we will find ourselves, Chair, this will be a policy ideological toss-up question in terms of how one would view it. The bottom line is that the state alone cannot be able to take us where we want to go. Where we need to be circumspect is on ensuring that the infrastructure, which is the backbone of logistics, is protected by the state through state ownership. And we have got that responsibility. The second point, Chairperson, is that there is merit in, some people may see it as a slogan, but it is a fundamental tenet of development. The state's primary responsibility is to create an enabling and conducive environment for businesses to operate in order to create jobs, to ensure economic growth and development. The centrality of that is about the state doing the basics of intervention for development. What does that mean? We need to ensure that we've got an electricity and energy supply. We need to work on the infrastructure of our roads, our rail. We need to ensure that there's water for businesses. So it's a long list. So the state has got obligations because the state on its own is not a job creator. Our public wage bill, as we know, is already high. Now, what's the alternative? The alternative is on public sector participation, which will be dictated to the terms of those public sector operators by what we do. So again, there's a mutual symbiosis that we need to exploit here if we want to get the jobs that we need. But as again I say, Chair, this will be a policy ideological toss-up, and as things stand now, we believe that public-private partnerships, the private sector participation is instrumental in us taking a Transnet forward.
Thank you very much. I think, Honourable Nzimande, it will be, it's one of those questions, good. I'm 100% convinced that this is also not cast in stone. The system is not working at the moment, like the board director said. So to get the system going, the state will have to do something, but I think it's going to evolve as we go along into the future. Would you like to add something?
Chairperson, because the Honourable Member Nzimande asked me to come in, so I'm sort of coming into this space with a bit of trepidation, I must say, because it's a policy space, and it's not our space. As Transnet, we are implementers of policy. But needless to say, I want to share that Transnet is the incumbent. So what does that mean? It means that we have a number of levers. We have the institutional knowledge, we have the expertise, and we have the infrastructure. And we've been able to run this organization for many years very successfully. But also we've been able to identify the gaps where we need help. So when we're talking about these PSP, we look at it from 3 levels. One, what parts of our business can be done better by somebody else who is not Transnet? Because we've inherited some businesses that are no longer profitable for us, which may serve a very important need in terms of what the country requires. So this is an inflection point for us, an opportunity to pivot and say, well, there are other players there. This does not need to be part of the stable of Transnet. And then we want to create and enable those opportunities to come out through this structural reform process. The second one is also to say, what are the areas that we believe are the competencies that needs to be within Transnet that presently we're not doing well in harnessing because of resource limitations. Then we partner with the private sector to bolster our capacity and our competence in those areas. The last one is to say, maybe we need to review our delivery model. In other words, not everything has to be delivered by us directly. It can still be packaged in such a manner that we can still derive value as a business. But perhaps what we need to build within Transnet is a contract management capability, where even if it's in somebody else's hands, it still delivers value to us as Transnet. So I'm just sort of taking it one level, not at the level of policy, to say, at least in the short term, when I say short term, maybe 5 to 8 years, this is how we would believe this may play out. Beyond that, we would leave it to the policymakers to decide and evaluate the efficacy of what has been put in place. I hope that helps. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Chair. Let's go over to Honorable Kahunda.
Thanks, Chair, and greetings to Deputy Minister, the Chairperson, and the CEO, and the entire team, honorable members. Mine is also short. It's based on the lived experience. If you take the model that SAA applied, with the challenges that SAA was faced with, it had options to take. Part of those options was to outsource, which has got nothing wrong on it as an exercise, but it's how you derive benefits out of that, and how do you ensure and ascertain that that exercise on its own, it benefits the very same entity. What we have lost during that time was the lucrative routes. We are recovering now. But if you look at the time loss and the profits that would have been accumulated, it's a different case. So I think in implementing the approach that Transnet is coming up with, it's a good approach, but we need to investigate and see to it that we are not going to be, in a long run, losing a lot as government. Because I would like to say that as much as the state should be playing a role of creating a conducive environment, but if you look, Honorable Chair, at the practical experience of how do you operate the mixed economy is three-legged. It's the state, it's the private capital, is the social partners. So what has been happening is that the social partners have been left at the periphery. So as a result, we think that 30% that we give for social participation is enough, whilst on the other side, it doesn't make huge impact. So I think in the form of responding to the plight of the poor, Chair, and the economic transformation, will request that the team looks at ensuring that we broaden participation, especially from the social partners, also not distancing the state to play a pivotal role in this action. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kahunda. Would you like to, I don't know, but there's more statement than a question, but would you like to respond to the statement, Deputy Minister?
No, thanks, Chair. No, I think Honorable Kahunda raises fundamentally important points that part of the work that has to happen in Transnet, of course, is that the PSP, amongst others, seeks to ensure transformation and access And so when we speak about the social partners and the plight of the poor, is to ensure that we open up space for people who ordinarily would not have had opportunity to participate in the work that we are doing. But I think the warnings that he speaks to are of critical importance. And to say, Chair, in invoking SAA, I think if you look at where SAA comes from, and you look at where Transnet comes from, you look at where PRASA comes from, we cannot ignore the very sad realities of state capture. And what we now need to do is that our participation, or rather our PSP, must be transparent to avoid a stranglehold of private players coming in through the back door for nefarious reasons. And therefore, that is why the RFI is important, because it's about oversight, it's about accountability, and it's about transparency. Because there's a fundamental difference between PSP and state capture. And Chair, you will recall in my previous life, for 10 years, I was on the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, 5 of whom I chaired. And I can give a perspective of chapter and verse about how Transnet in itself bore the brutal brunt
It's ground zero.
of the corruption, the maladministration and the fraud, mismanagement, poor governance. And what the board and the executives are trying to do is, before reaching their targets, is having to sort out that mess first in order to make Transnet competitive again. If you go to slide 22 of the presentation that Transnet has presented to us, actually, it's just no longer up, you will see the very clear grow capacity. It says Transnet aims to grow its capacity to handle 250 tons of freight to meet the demand of under-reserved market, both freight and ports. So Transnet has got targets, there's country targets. And it says introducing elements of PPPs to attract private sector investment, increase efficiency. So there's a very clear balancing act. And there the Grow SA economy, on the far right of that slide, points to you what to do. Reforms can lead to creation of jobs and skills development, contributing to a more skilled workforce. So this is a developmental intervention to ensure that we deal with those challenges. But I think that there is merit in what Honorable Kaunda is saying to the warning lights he gives. I mean, if he's speaking about losing lucrative deals, it still does not make sense to me, Chair, why SAA would have shut down its South Africa-India route when South Africa has got the second highest population of Indians outside India, after India. And it would tell you that you would have had to keep that line. So those state capture decisions across the SOE sector have to be corrected before we actually are able to, or rather parallel to us taking the SOEs forward. Thank you.
Thank you, DM. And I think, honourable members, we need to burn slide 22 into our minds, because every time Transnet appears in front of this committee, there's a lot of updates we can request in terms of slide 22. It's a really important slide, that. And I thank you for putting that into the presentation, because that encapsulates exactly what Transnet needs to do and what we need to measure as a committee going forward. Honourable Keza, would you like to have a bite?
Yes, please, Chair. Thank you very much, DM. Thank you very much, Chair, for the opportunity. You know, the committee is blessed with an artist who actually sang the theme song for Pillar Paper Healthcare Train. And I was told that artist's voice is still intact to perform those functions. But that's on a lighter note, Chair. No, it's not me. It's an artist in the committee. It's not. It's not. That song was written. I think it's Pillow Paper Healthcare Train. That's what it does all the time. It's a loop, Chair. But I would like to know the frequency of the train in rural areas in rural provinces such as Mpumalanga, where I come from, I hardly see it. What it does and what impact does it bring, and awareness to the communities. Because where I come from, I don't think that the community is aware enough. There is a data of a ward. You know that as public representatives, we'll have this data of blind people, people that are struggling. These ones have a hearing aid problem and so on. And these ones are disabled in a ward. And therefore, I don't think that they do have enough, nor even infrastructure to can tell them locally about pillow paper healthcare train. That's one. And the Deputy Minister spoke so eloquently about the industrial expansion as a concept. I was quite attracted, and which is characterized by production, technology, strengthening advancement, economic growth. But this is happening to a country where a concentration of urbanization, therefore, of this infrastructure, of Transnet, then concentrates these activities into 3 provinces of the country only. So what development measures of the infrastructure have you robustly done to actually impact the out-migration into and the overpopulation that characterizes the improvement of infrastructure?
In seconds, please.
1 second, and then whether you, the Auditor General Chair, let me leave that, whether you have to ensure, whether you have measures to ensure that in terms of the reliability of the key infrastructure and rail volumes improvement, you also build the activities in rural stations for economic activities to happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Keza. Deputy Minister, would you like to delegate?
Shall I respond in respect of pillow paper? Honourable Member, I'm awaiting the stats for Mpumalanga specifically, but if I can just give the number as a whole. In this past year, we have served over 640,776 patients. That is up from 434,837 in the previous reporting period. Medication that has been distributed to over 47,000 patients, up from 35,000 the previous year. The health clinics have served 224,188 patients, also up from 139,564 the previous year. And the investment that we've made was 62.45 million. Now, again, an area where more investment is required, because as you can see, the need continues to increase. And at the same time, we obviously would want to support our communities because they are our eyes and ears on the ground. We often get information from them regarding some of these incidents that we are experiencing. We have also been trying to engage getting support in terms of donations and the like from other entities, because we see the value that the pillow paper trains bring to our communities. We will get the specific information per province, in fact, Chairperson, and submit that as well.
Great, thank you very much. Are you covered, Honourable Keza? Honourable Keza, are you covered?
No, I thought that was a country's stats.
Yes, it's the country.
It's a country stats, so I would wait for the province.
We will bring per province.
And then you break it down to district and so forth, so that I can track where people must go.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Honourable Makasini.
Thank you, Chairperson. Greeting to the Deputy Minister and the leadership of Transnet. My issues on a Transnet property that are all over the country, that are being abandoned. What are you intending to do? Are you intending to pose out, or are you planning to revive such a parcel of land or to hand over to the municipality? Which department are you working with? Because we have the crisis of people not, or municipalities don't have land, and Transnet they do own. So what is your plan to expose the land to the maybe relevant department so that they can use to avoid the incident that I once spoke about of Bethlehem, where your property were used by the gang, the child ended up being raped late last year in one of your properties. So if you can tell us what are you going to do. Then another issue, I didn't capture the job opportunity that we have created, although you were doing locomotive in Durban. If we can break down on the job opportunities that you created, on your positive strides that we have done of the locomotive in Durban, so that we can understand that whether is there any job opportunity of how many people do they have benefited to that project. The issue of the executive that has been led by you, ma'am, that you presented, it was not there, you revived. You revived with the new people, or you took people that were inside the institution, then you came together to revive the team that you are leading, because you'll say it was there, then next day was not there, then you revive it. So how did you restructure that new team that has been led by yourself? You took people that were working there in the Transnet, or did you completely start a new program with new people that were coming outside, except yourself, because you say you have been in 25 years in the institution, you definitely were there. So how did you restructure to revive the team that you are leading, the institute, the department that you are leading? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Makasini. Over to you, Advocate Phillips.
I'm going to try and answer as best as I can. You'll help me as well, Chair. I didn't hear the first question, but I think you'll correct me if I've understood it. So in terms of the transit property division and the question about making property or land available across the country, we have been, firstly, we have a, let's call it a disposal program that we have presented, because we need ministerial approval in any event for disposal of any assets. So that has been presented. We have indicated what non-core properties that we can take to the market for sale. Then there are those assets where we actually have currently either government departments currently in those areas. We also have a number of properties, residential properties, I think upwards of 3,000 residential properties. Some of them we've been able to get our, obviously give our employees a first preference to those. There are those that are currently occupied by, in fact, illegal occupants, and there's a process in respect of that. We have also been engaging with human settlements, various municipalities, public works, and all government departments who are able to take over some of these properties. The challenge, Chair and Honourable Member, that we have been experiencing is that, of course, Transnet currently has to pay for all of the services that are attached to some of these properties. But in some of them, we are not receiving any return, whether in the form of rental and the like. And a number of the departments, municipalities, etc., are willing to take over the properties but want us to still continue to pay the cost. And Transnet cannot do that under the financial circumstances that it finds itself under. So we're continuing to engage. Of course, there are areas where we are quite willing to even hand over properties as long as we do not have to carry on carrying the costs of those properties, and that has been part of the challenges that we've been experiencing. So what we find, and in fact we've been now engaging to say, as we go to market with these non-core properties, of course we would want to give preference to departments such as human settlements, municipalities that require it for their areas, but when they engage us, they must be willing to take over the costs that are attached to those properties, because we cannot carry it.
Executives and restructuring.
On the appointment of the executives, we had essentially the group chief executive position that was vacant. The recruitment process in Transnet is such that we do internal advertising first. If the skills are not present internally, then we would go to the external market. However, in certain positions, there may be a need to do both internal and external advertising at the same time. You'll note that the position of the group chief executive was quite a public process, went to the market. I mean, I entered the, let's call it the race, and was fortunately, I think fortunately, appointed in the position. And of course, I was, as you say, a Transnetter, a veteran Transnetter, right, having started in 1999. Mr. Lotswalo came through also a process that was run both internally and externally, I think because of the kind of expertise that we require. But then again, Mr. Lotswalo is a Transnetter, having been the former Chief Operating Officer within Transnet Port Terminals. So he comes with extensive Transnet experience. The GCFO also came through a process that was both internal and external. And the GCFO was formerly also part of a state-owned enterprise. She joined us from ESCOM. For all of the other positions below my level and below that, the chief executives, for example, those positions were again advertised internally first. And because we were able to find the necessary skills and expertise internally, there was therefore no need for us to go to the external market. So the appointments that we've made in the recent past is the chief executive of the Transit Infrastructure Manager. The chief executive there is Mr. Moshe Motlowi, who has been in the business, I think, since probably 20 years, if I'm not mistaken, Moshe. He's been there probably around about 20 years. And then Ms. Bessie Mabundla, who is now been appointed recently as the Chief Executive of Transit Engineering, also an internal appointment. It's very important for me as the Chief Executive to ensure that we have the robust succession planning within the business, but that also that the business is led by people who understand it, who have walked you know, in the mile of the people who are there. So we're trying to focus on that. So Ms. Besima Budle is there. She joined TE, having been at Transnet Freight Rail before that. She's been acting in that position and has been very instrumental in the improvements that we've seen. And fortunately, through the recruitment process again, she was able to compete internally and be successful in the appointment of that position. Another appointment that we made is the Chief Executive of Transnet Pipelines, Mr. Sibongiseni Kati. He, in fact, my previous role before moving into the group Chief Executive role was that of Chief Executive of Transnet Pipelines. And Mr. Sibongiseni at the time was, in a sense, I think, in the succession plan. He was able to, again, compete for that position. And we found that when we went through the recruitment process, he was clearly the best applicant for the job. He's been in the business, I think, also, I think, in excess of 10 years, definitely. So, again, an internal appointment. I think, Chair, that's... Oh, very important. We went through a process also both internally and externally because of the contribution of Transnet Freight Rail to Transnet. And then again through that process, we had Mr. Russell Baikis, who has been in Transnet for 30 years. come out as the most competent and successful candidate through that recruitment process. So yeah, I think most of in fact, those positions have all come through the internal recruitment process.
Thank you.
I think that's it.
Chair, I think I'm sure the CEO will be able to pull up the numbers of the job opportunities arising out of the Durban locomotives.
In the process of accessing that.
Thank you very much. Honorable Makasini.
The only thing that they are having properties in Sasolburg, in Metsimaholo, that are being occupied by people that they are not working for Transnet, and we have your junior artisans that are working that they don't have properties. If we can get a data of who are those people who are occupying your houses in Sasolburg, because majority of those people are not working for Transnet, and your people that are working on in the lower position are renting, they don't have properties. I think if we can get that report, especially in Sasolburg, in Metsimaholo. Thank you.
We will do that, Chair.
Thank you, Advocate Phillips. Honorable Peter. Honorable Peter is going to mention, this is tongue-in-cheek, PMG, don't record this. He's going to say, why couldn't we keep the Transnet jackets in Durban? And why did Transnet keep Transnet gave us jackets on the oversight the other day? They haven't got money, Honorable Peter.
Thank you, Chair. You haven't visited yet, Chair.
We were in Durban and we got to give the jackets back, so he's very sour about that.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. No, Chair, I was inspired by the introduction of the chairperson of the board when he just do his introduction remarks. My question is based, Chair, on your remarks. So when you speak, you said Transnet of today is not Transnet of yesterday. That's what you said. According to my own understanding, Transnet of yesterday, there was a passenger rail all over the show, all over South Africa. All over South Africa, there was a rail. There was a lot of people that were employed by Transnet then. So I just want you, Chair, to tell me why are you saying Transnet of yesterday is not Transnet of today. Secondly, you said you've got a recovery plan. It means you are covering the failures of the previous Transnet of yesterday. So you are coming now with that recovery plan of the failures of the previous Transnet. That's what you are saying. Lastly, I'm so interested when you are saying you recruited a team of skilled people to come and just assist the Transnet of today. Now, my question is, do you have a passenger rail that comes from Port Elizabeth to Cape Town? That is my question only. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it might be a Prasa question, but anyway, I'll let you the last one. But I'll let you please continue, Chair. I think you want to answer.
Yeah, thank you very much, Honorable Peter. I do think that, let me just deal with the issue of where Transnet starts and where it ends. We are in the main, in the freight rail space. In other words, we do not provide any rail services for passengers. So we mainly transport goods and both bulk and also various products, like agricultural products, grain, motor vehicles, and we have a national footprint. And part of the work that we've been doing is to categorize our network in what we call high density network and what we call the low density network. So the high density network would be your big corridors, like where we transport iron ore, manganese, and coal, and also Chrome, on the northeast corridor. And so when I'm talking about the Transnet of today is better than the Transnet of yesterday, I'm specifically confining myself to what the board that started in July 2023 inherited, where the state of the business was, both operationally and financially. And we also took a view as a board that we are not going to spend a lot of time worrying about what happened. We're very clear in our mandate and in our conviction that what we are here is not to point fingers, but is to fix the problems that are at hand. But we needed to have a very clear plan to do so. And that plan needed to be socialized with all the stakeholders, the board, the executives, the employees, and the trade unions. And that's why it took us from July to October to finalize it, because it was important to secure the buy-in of everybody. And it's really on the back of that we've been able to build this kind of momentum that today is yielding those kinds of results. The second thing that we acknowledged along the way was the fact that we did not have all the tools and all the skills in-house to execute on that plan. And that's why it was important for us to work on a recruitment process where we've identified the key gaps and the key levers that we would need to drive this plan. And as part of that, there was the second part of saying, not only that we are driving an operational recovery plan, there is also the subset of introducing new structural reforms. So it was important for us to make sure that at the leadership level, we've got the kind of bandwidth that would help us to try and do those two in parallel. Thirdly, that we have the sufficient financial backing to be able to execute that. So Michelle, for example, talks about the fleet renewal program, because one of the things that we identified were the breakdowns in some of the equipment in the ports, which cannot just be fixed by repair. We needed money because some of them have been running for 18 years or longer, and they've passed their economic life. So part of the recovery plan is to actually go to market, procure those equipment, which we are now seeing them being delivered. Now, on the back of that, we now feel ready and confident that as the citrus season is approaching us, we have a better response mechanism to deal with that. It's really standing on this belief and this conviction that we make the statement that the Transnet of today is not the Transnet of yesterday. It is standing on the premise of what has been delivered and the outlook into the future that makes us believe that we are now well poised to even do better. It's really on the premise of what we've done, and it's also on the basis of making sure that we share these things, we are open, we are transparent. And lastly, to say that in terms of the economic activities and the number of people that we are talking about, well, part of the reform agenda is to find different ways of getting there, where instead of doing everything by ourselves, because of the limitations in our own balance sheet, looking at different ways in which we could partner with other entities and with other people that can help us to deliver on our mandate. I hope that that clarifies that point, Honorable Chair.
DM, you want to add?
No, thanks, Chair. I'm just wanting to indicate on the PRASA-related matters, I'm sure at an appropriate time in terms of the committee's scheduling, we will be able to come and brief the committee on the work that is being done at PRASA, so that those substantive questions can receive the responses from the relevant people and entities. Suffice it to say, Chair, that both PRASA and Transnet require the very strong intervention of law enforcement agencies in dealing with the issues of vandalism and theft, which are a disruption to the fair flow of our systems, our trains. And so I think that it may be actually prudent for the committee to also want to engage with law enforcement, notwithstanding other interventions which may have been done, probably like PRASA, in terms of beefing up their own security interventions. But the investments that are being made and touted run the risk of stalling progress if at every material point of a milestone we have to then pivot to deal with the elements of criminality which currently characterize the ecosystem. It goes to the question that Honorable Geza raised earlier on around rural towns and so on. I mean, if any Transnet moved good is not moving to make casual happy stops along the way. It's from pit to port, and where we need to revive the station economies around the work that PRASA would be doing. Just like you are looking at the taxi rank economy, there's also the station economy. But what has characterized the ecosystem has been levels of vandalism, theft of not just the rail line, but of also the hardware infrastructure. So the criminality problem persists as a risk actually for our entities. And the last point is to say then the illegal invasion onto rail tracks and the setting up of informal settlements thereof is also a problem. If you look at what happened on the Central Line here in Cape Town, it's quite clear that our resources now have to move towards the relocation of those people in order to open up the lines. So the system does remain vulnerable to criminality, whether you're speaking about Transnet or the PRASA. But what is important then is that we here are not the security cluster. We are not a law enforcement agency. Our law enforcement is limited to traffic law enforcement on the roads. And so we need, Chairperson, and I'm flagging this matter for the attention of the committee, for a very hard conversation that has to be had. It's the same thing around the safety of your e-hailing drivers, to say that people will come to transport and say, what are you doing about the safety of the drivers? It's a criminality matter. It's people with guns, using them in all sorts of things. So broadly speaking, Chairperson, the infrastructure ecosystem is vulnerable and threatened by criminality. I would dare say, Chair, I'm not sure if it's within your scope, but water itself is susceptible to vandalism, water infrastructure, because then what happens after is that you then have to bring in your the tankers, because that's a money-making scheme. If you interrupt Transnet, what happens? Is then your alternative, you have to go to trucks. Just, Chair, if I draw your attention, Kusile Power Station in Mpumalanga, Honorable Geza will know, is built deliberately on top of a coal mine, so that you extract there and pump the coal into the power station. But what is happening is that we've got 700 trucks every day on our roads transporting coal to Usile Power Station because there's no mining taking place. It makes you then wonder as to whether the interventions you do, we then have to bear the brutal brunt of our road network, having to carry 700 trucks on a daily basis, which we had not designed our road infrastructure. We pay that forward when you have to do maintenance and so on. So there's a broader element, Chair, which requires our collective attention, and I'm just flagging it in the context of what has been said. Thank you.
Thank you, DM. Honorable Peter, are you covered?
Honorable Chair, I'm covered, particularly to the point that says Transnet is transforming, is moving forward every day. I'm fine. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Honorable Skierkogel?
Thank you, Chairperson. Now, I want to start off by and really congratulating you guys for starting with this public participation partnerships, because between 1990 and 2016, India and China spent close to $453 billion on SOEs working with the private sector. And if you go to their transport network, it's amazing. You move billions of people every single day. So I commend you, and I please encourage you to go on with that. My first question is just with the paper. When you stop at stations or at towns and there's no stations, how do we do that? Because I know that the last time it was stopped in my hometown, I went there and there was no toilets. People were sleeping outside at night there, like they're camping out, and I was talking about 50, 60 gogos waiting for service. So when you say you have invested in infrastructure, what part of that train did you invest in? And then I was partially covered with Honorable Makasini, with these properties, wouldn't it be more financially viable to actually sell these properties to the current occupants, giving them first chance to buy, because then they will immediately absorb those rates and taxes and those services that you're paying, because a lot of these properties are not being used or where there's no more infrastructure. So that could be a way of generating. So have you thought about just selling these houses where people are occupying with? Then you said certain people were suspended. Now, have they been charged? And if they made Transnet have a financial loss, have you been able to recuperate those? And just a little bit details of who are these employees that were charged. Then you also mentioned in the presentation that you've borrowed money with assets, but you don't have those assets. So what consequent management steps have been taken with these borrowed money, which is taxpayers' money, but now you say you don't have these assets? My second last question, and I think the Deputy Minister touched on that, but what really active steps has Transnet and have done to work with SAPS to maybe establish a special unit of combating crime? I know that PRASA is making great strides now by some of these central lines where they have 2 officers, security officers between stations. And then the last question is PRASA raised it with us. How far is PRASA and Transnet going to transfer certain lines to PRASA so that they can manage it? And also, how can Transnet assist PRASA to lower their fares? Because sometimes you don't make more money by increasing the fares that they use your line. Instead, you'll make more money if you increase the frequency that they use your lines instead of hiring the fares. Well, have there any agreement been reached on that? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Skierkogel.
I'm going to suggest that Michelle deal with most of these questions. There are just 2. The one about the fares of PRASA, I'm going to defer here to the Deputy Minister just to help us with that. And on the consequence management, Michelle, you will start, but it will be a relay between yourself, myself, and the Deputy Minister. But on SAPS, I think between you and Soli, you can speak on those and the other issues around pillow paper and so on. Thank you.
Sure. What was that number again? 1521. Okay. Honorable Chair, let me go back to the one question that was asked about jobs in Durban, and then I'll come back to the Honorable Member. On the matter in Durban, we've got 1,521 employees in the Durban factory. With the program for the assembly of the new locomotives, we increased that number with 389 389 new jobs in that factory, which will give that number. Then I'm going to try my best on the questions by the honourable member. The issue with the Pelopeppa train is the following, and we've had a number of these instances, as you say, where the gogos are waiting and they can't get to access. Again, as we've indicated, we sit with a network that is declining as we speak, and you'll appreciate the size of that network. We've done a lot of work to try and get the network up to standard so that we can have uninterrupted flows of trains. Unfortunately, Pelopeppa can be on its way, and then there's cabling that is stolen, there's rails that is vandalized, and then the train is not able to move. So we have two things. One, consistently make sure that the network is at the right standard. That in itself, as I've indicated, is a challenge. We have a major backlog, and we're not able to get everywhere. We are now, particularly on the heavy haul lines, trying to get our customers to support us in trying to invest with us in that network so that they can support us in trying to get that up. On the Pelopeppa train, I mean, it moves on, the same networks, same as the PRASA networks. But it's a challenge every time that we have to move that train. Also, we find instances where, because of the damage to the network, if there's an incident, it causes damage to the train. And we have to try and schedule that train and for maintenance at the right time. And there's always these competing interests. So we're really trying our best. This is one of the reasons why we've also made a call to private sector interests to try and, whether it be through sponsorships or donations, for us to keep this running because we understand the need. But unfortunately, the financial constraints are also hampering us to be able to do these things. Then, in respect of the matter of why not sell to current occupants, it is exactly that, our first preference, more so if those occupants are legal occupants, and more so if those occupants are Transnet workers. We have also tried to make various arrangements with our Transnet workers to enable them to access, if they need to access funding, etc. We've been able to assist our workers who are in those properties. It becomes very difficult if the occupants are illegal. And we have found a number of those kind of situations where, people have hijacked some of these properties. So it is an ongoing exercise, but certainly one that we are working very hard on. The matter of the consequence management, and I'm taking this as specifically because I raised the issue of the Transnet National Port Authority. In respect of the Transnet National Port Authority, there were certain I would call it governance contraventions that have taken place there. It's not in these particular instances, we don't have a situation where there has been any specific or quantified loss to us as, or to the state as Transnet. What we have found is that it's matters of conflicts of interest, abuse of power, those kind of matters, but we certainly have not found any specific evidence of corruption in the particular instances. What has happened in those cases, and we had, I think it's a number of 12, Chair, I'm going to try to remember the numbers. We have had 3 dismissals. We have had, I think, 4 resignations before, so we've suspended and formally charged. Before we could proceed with the disciplinary hearing, and upon, formally charging these individuals, 4 of them elected to resign. There was, because they were represented, there were requests for settlements, which we have refused to pay. And effectively, but we accepted the resignations. purely because sometimes you have to make a business decision in these instances. And that's what we've done. Rather than have long outdrawn disciplinary process where because people are on suspension, they're on suspension with pay, and these are quite senior people, we made the decision to accept the resignations. And I think we've had 4 of that, and I think we have had 3 people, I'm hoping that the numbers tally up, we've had 3 who were found guilty, but the sanction was short of dismissal in the form of final written warnings. And those people have returned, but to different areas of the business, because that was ultimately the decision of the presiding officers. There's one matter that remains outstanding, as I've indicated, and that is the matter of the chief executive of the TNPA, which is still ongoing. That matter, I think, will run its course. Chair, do you want to add?
No, thank you very much, Michelle. Honorable Chair and honorable members, just to pick up where Michelle has left off, we are really seized with the matter of the chief executive. And I think at the right time, when due process has been followed, that would certainly be communicated at the appropriate time. On the issue of the debt that is sitting on our balance sheet, what Michelle calls it debt that is not productive. This matter is, it has a lot of history to it and is before court, where, for example, part of the work is a challenge in collaboration with the SIU as to the regularity or otherwise of that procurement process. So it's very much outside our own hands, and except to say that once that due process has been fully followed through, there would of course be determinations by the court as to where to from here. So from where we sit, we think that in terms of the fiduciary responsibility, the fact that this matter is now being dealt with a competent court, we will be bound by whatever the outcomes of that matter is. There was a question, Michelle, on the SAPS. Perhaps you can just deal with that. And just from my side, as I retreat, ask Michelle to deal with that question and then hand over to the Deputy Minister just to deal with the issue of the tariff structure for PRASA. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. We work very closely with, in fact, most of the law enforcement authorities. With the SAPS specifically, towards, I think it was last quarter of last year, I signed an MOU with, together with the National Commissioner with the SAPS to implement a host of actions in terms of how we can work together to ensure that we, where we arrest criminals, that we are able to, together with the SAPS, also package these matters so that they are court ready and that we don't then have a failure within the court system. So it actually, it's a chain. We work with SAPS together with our security partners to firstly prevent. Where we are unable to prevent, it's very important that the SAPS then implement the legislation as is required. So I make an example. The legislation regarding critical infrastructure, previously known in respect of National Key Points, now National Critical Infrastructure Act, for example, would say that in those instances where there's damage to critical infrastructure, there has to be a formal bail application. Previously, before we started working with them, the police would arrest people, give them some police bail under 500 Rand, and release them. So it would be a catch and release, right? We don't see those people. they disappear. By far, and very difficult to get them now into the court system because they've gone. We then spend quite a bit of time with the police in terms of educating them, making available our resources to ensure that they understand what it means when you implement the Critical Infrastructure Act. What that now means is that in every instance, particularly very difficult on the rail because we arrest hundreds of people. On the pipeline space, where we have, we used to have, when I was there, we had in one instance, 1 month, 26 incidents in 1 month. That has come down to, I think, 1 every 2 months now, right? But what we had to do there is then, as I've said, spend the time educating them so that when they arrest the perpetrators, they have to insist on a formal bail application, right? Once they are in the system, we then have, with the prosecuting authority, an arrangement where we actually, I have people that we pay for who have a watching brief to ensure that we don't now have a charge of theft, that we actually have a charge of damage to critical infrastructure. Because when you, as you'll understand, if you charge somebody with theft, you're going to catch and release them, right? But if you charge them with damage to critical infrastructure, there's minimum requirements. And we've had to insist that that be implemented to the letter. And we're continuing to have those kind of training and education engagements with the SAPS. We have also, I've recently met again with the National Director of Public Prosecutions, where we are again saying, you know, we are in a position with the resources that we also have to package matters in such a way that when you take them to court, we can be convinced of a conviction. Because when you look at the number of arrests and you look at the conviction rate, which is under 5%, there's a lot of work that we need to do to ensure that we are successful. So a lot of work, I can tell you, that is going on.
Thank you very much.
Chairperson,
Advocate
just to
Phillips.
conclude that response, if you go to slide 23 of the presentation, it will give you the ecosystem of the National Logistics Crisis Committee, which is inclusive of SAPS. And so it would tell you the extent to which this matter is receiving priority attention in that context, in light of what the CEO has said. So I just thought we should draw attention to that as well. Chair, on the issue around costs, of course, we do know that it is cheaper to travel on a train. If on average for a South African, it would cost about 416 rands per month, as opposed to the average of other modes of transport of about 1.5. So this is about putting money back in the pockets of consumers, particularly the working class. And secondly, Chair, is, as I alluded earlier on, the investment being made into the signaling system is to ensure a heightened rate of frequency of the train, so that we don't just run trains for the sake of running trains. It's important that there's efficiency built into that as well. Thirdly, Chairperson, around the issue of the safety of the network, whilst we look at criminality, we do need to also look at governance decisions that have been taken, or misgovernance. The doctor will assist me there, the content advisor, if there's such a word, but let me call it misgovernance, right? You had a situation at PRASA of an irregular contract that was declared for security. And so the board, because of that court decision, decided to cancel that contract without putting in place a remedial action or mitigating intervention to say, in the absence of that, what happens. And so because of that misgovernance decision, the network was left vulnerable on the eve of COVID. And so then you had people moving very quickly to vandalize the network. So I raise this in that context, that whilst there's criminality, we also do need to look at governance challenges. You will recall, Chair, that SASA at some point was found to have an irregular contract in terms of the payouts that they were doing to pension and social grant recipients. That contract was declared invalid. However, they went to the court and asked for a condonation to allow them to transition so that you do not create a gap or a vacuum in the system so that they could continue with the obligation. So there's precedence to this. What happened at PRASA, which then was, made the whole network vulnerable, is that there was no mitigation done. So we have to look at these things in that historical context as well, that there's consequence management that has to be meted out, not just at criminals, but at those that we have entrusted the responsibility to govern. Then, of course, Chair, you are aware we are in the process of setting up the single transport economic regulator, the STER. Once that is done, amongst others, the work that it will do is regulate the prices for commuters so that there's transparency and access as per the network statement. And then lastly, I'm advised, Chair, that on the question of the transfers of properties, that previous ministers in the department had set up a committee to look into that in terms of what was possible and what was not. What I will do, Chair, is ask for a report on that committee, and I'm advised that PRASA and Transnet are involved or should be involved in the committees that have set up. So once we get that report with an update, we'll be in a position to more broadly and substantively come back to the committee. Thank you.
Thanks, DM. Honourable Skerko, are you covered?
I am, thank you, Chair.
I was getting worried that the DM is scared of the Chief Whip because he's running the clock down so that the Chief Whip doesn't get time to ask his questions. But there's time for you, Chief Whip. So Chief Whip, can you enlighten us, please? I'm sure you've got lots.
Thank you, Chair. Let me appreciate the DM and the team for giving us the historical context where we come from with Transnet, and also the strategy that they are putting in place to turn the clock around. I just have one question, which is specific, but is informed by the strategy to address the challenge that Transnet is facing. On slide on slide 24 and 25, there is a reference to the targeted investment in key segments, and amongst areas identified is the iron ore and manganese. So the question that I want to pose in relation to these two areas, it's informed by the bottlenecks that to a larger degree has impacted not only the iron ore corridor, but also the manganese belt, and you find that in many areas around operation, to the extent that even some of the emerging black manganese players are even beginning to consider disposing some of their asset. So now, the question that I want to pose is in relation to the 5-year plan that we have as an entity, which among others entails the request for information that the minister has outlined, because specifically there is also a referral to both the Kalahari and the iron ore line. My biggest concern is in the immediate to medium term. What do we do to ensure that we ameliorate the bottlenecks that is beginning to impact on, it's not only just bigger players, whether it is Kumba, whether it is South 32, whether it is Asmang, but the biggest concern, the impact of that on the emerging
black manganese players in the Hamahara corridor. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Moimang. That's exactly on time. Who's going to take that? Advocate Phillips.
So let me talk to what we are doing in the immediate term, because I think the RFIs we know has recently been published. That will allow, out of that process, a framing of the problem that we can then go to market with a request later in August. I think the Minister said for proposals across all of these networks. In the immediate term, my colleague next to me is very important because he makes sure that these networks can sustain and continue to move. So in fact, in the past year already, we've been working very closely with all of the customers. I'm going to speak to the manganese now. On the iron ore side and on the coal lines, we have, together with the customers, obtained independent technical assessments, because we wanted to be very clear with the customers in respect of what is required over this 5-year period to get this network to the standards required to move the kind of volumes that we are targeting. Now, you know, if I talk on the iron ore line, you know that we also move manganese through to Saldanha. So this is all impacted more or less by the same program. Now, the challenge that we have is we have to keep trains moving. So a lot of the work that we have to do, we have to try and do in between trains. But we also have annual shutdowns, right? Now, previously, when we looked at how things were done, we found that Transnet was not able to, for a host of reasons, to actually do what is required in the shutdown to enable the movement of the volumes upwards. The GCOO has, together with his team and the customers, with the input now of the independent technical assessments, they've been able to identify what can be done within 6 months, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years. So we know exactly what is possible over the 5-year plan. We have targeted interventions in respect of, for example, how many rails can we do within shutdown period 1? How many rails can we replace within shutdown period 2? Because that line is consistently hampered by what we now call rail breaks. So the rail actually is breaking, right? And it causes derailments and all sorts of stuff. And that's the work that they are doing. The independent technical assessment told us that we need about 10 billion, upwards of 10 billion, over a 5-year period to get different parts of the network done. So that's the work. We're continuing to invest. The RFI will run, and if there's private sector participation going forward, that will take, you know, that will happen when it will happen. But we cannot wait. We have to continue to sustain and maintain this network. And it's the same with the coal line, and it's the same on the manganese side. Now, on the manganese side, there's, and of course we'll also see it come through the RFI, there's a bigger, it's quite a big project because, you know, we've got a big demand. South Africa is sitting on 80% of the world reserve of manganese. That's why we are finding all our emerging players coming into the market, because this is we know it's a growing market. In the port of PE, we are sitting with what we call the PE bulk terminal. That terminal should have been decommissioned years ago, 2010. We are continuing to put a Band-Aid on that facility. That facility is currently doing about just over 4 billion, 5 million tons, 5 million tons. That facility has to be completely decommissioned. So we will see ourselves building a new manganese export terminal in Muga. And that's the big project that I think, as we get the inputs from the market, that's what we're planning, is to not only have the terminal, but also the rail connectivity. Transnet does not have the funds we have to get the funds from the market, which is why that project is also ripe for private sector participation. The license there currently is owned by Transnet Port Terminals. So we would need to fix the connection as well as build a new export facility that should be able to move between 12 and 16 million tons, depending on what the studies say, because we still have the Saldanha, and we would also want to increase the capacity in Saldanha. Saldanha is currently moving about 8 million tons of manganese. But the impact on the emerging players especially is felt more than, the big players, because one vessel for an emerging player could shut them down if that vessel doesn't take volumes out. And we acutely aware of, trying to fix these bottlenecks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Moimanga. You covered. Thank you very much. That takes us right on time. There's never time for me to ask a question. But normally the effectiveness of the committee takes away the need for me to ask any questions, because they normally cover me. So I hope you appreciate the fact that our committee is also the committee that looks after public infrastructure. So transport, of which Transnet is a small part, is part of our committee's work, and then we have the Minister and the Presidency, and we also have the Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation. So there's a vast scope that our committee has to cover. And then we're all members of other committees as well, for example, COCTO, Water and Sanitation, Human Settlements. So unlike the National Assembly, the National Council of Provinces, we can't be experts in anything. We've got to try and be jack of all trades here. And sometimes you will see us looking a little bit like rabbits in a headlight, because we've just come from another meeting with a totally different mindset. But that also allows us the privilege to sometimes cut to the chase. And for me, the chase here, Deputy Minister, is the juxtaposition of slide number 10 to slide number 22 in this presentation. So if you look at slide number 10, that's the problem statement. High debt, declining market share, declining asset condition, maintenance backlog, key equipment non-availability, and legacy governance shortcomings. So that's your problem. Your solution, which is fantastic, is on slide 22, because that's your recovery plan. So my question to you is, and I hope I'm not opening a door to something here, but my question to you is, Deputy Minister, will this department get done what needs to be done in terms of the recovery plan without a state bailout? Because at the moment, state bailouts is not a great topic in the current economic climate, with our debt to GDP ratio sitting at nearly 75%, and of which a lot of failing SOEs has contributed to over the last 10, 15 years. So I think if we can just get some clarity on that, please, DM.
Chair, I think that the RFI that the Minister has announced with the closing date of the 9th of May is of critical importance for us to be able to solicit expertise, ideas, and propose solutions further to the challenges that we actually have. And so the setting up of the private sector partnership unit, where we are now in towards finalizing it being set up with the DBSA through National Treasury, amongst others, is of critical importance for the long-term sustainability of Transnet and related work that we need to do. It is also an opportunity, Chairperson, to say Labour can be able to also raise their concerns and their outlook as part of the work that we are actually doing. So what we are endeavoring to do, Chairperson, is to maximize on available revenue streams and generation that is possible out there, in order for us to actually ensure that we keep Transnet on the right trajectory. Chair, there's a lot of work that needs to be done at Transnet and at all our entities to ensure that we turn the corner. The work we are doing now is to get ahead of the curve and understand further the lay of the land in terms of what it is that we are doing, so that we are able to articulate the challenges in a structured and coherent way, clearly define their scope, context, and impact to inform the development of a focused, strategic, and sustainable solution. That is where we are, Chairperson, and I think we should not be getting ahead of ourselves now on issues of bailouts. I think what we have presented on slide 22 is a clear North Star of what we want to achieve. And further, what we have on slide 23, if I'm not mistaken, if we can go, no, not slide 23, slide 20, Chairperson. If we can go to that slide, you will be in a position to see what it is that is the, well, as it says, the overview of the strategic interventions and programs to support volume recovery. We have set a country target, and so it's critical that we achieve all those key areas there on slide number 6. I do not think that at this point in time we should be speaking the language of bailouts, but what I do think we need to be doing, Chair, is focusing on the interventions and see where they take us. And I've got full confidence in the RFI process ahead of the 9th of May. I think that there's an appetite, and we need to leverage on that appetite. And of course, I think, Chair, it's a bold decision, policy decision, to set up a PSP unit. But I think what I must qualify is that public sector participation is not public sector ownership. And so it's important that we manage those realities. Chair, I think let us give all these processes the space and time. Also, we are very mindful as the department and ministry of the financial constraints to the national fiscus. And so we need to be able to be agile enough to explore the vast array of opportunities that are out there, and to indicate, Chair, that the Minister has my full support in pursuing the RFIs and in setting up the PSP for the broader context of what we want to achieve. And I think the board and the executives of Transnet, they too are keenly and vividly aware of the mammoth task on their shoulders, and they are going to be as innovative and as imaginative as possible to see what we can do and must do. Thank you, Chair.
It's duly noted. Thank you very much, DM. DM, honourable members and the esteemed board members of Transnet and your executive, I wish to extend my sincere thanks on behalf of this committee to the leadership of Transnet for their participation in today's important introductory meeting. I think this meeting marks a critical first step in re-establishing transparency, accountability, and a spirit of collaboration as we work towards a shared vision of national infrastructure that drives inclusive economic growth. And I think it's become our motto, when you move people and goods, you move money. And I think you said it, Advocate, earlier today, when you move goods, you move money. And I think that Transnet plays a monumental role in that. It's evident that Transnet stands at a crossroads. I mean, that's clear from what we saw today. You've outlined the challenges, unsustainable debt levels, infrastructure decay, operational efficiencies, historical governance failures, a lot of them. However, the strategic frameworks and reform intentions you presented also signal a willingness on behalf of yourselves to confront these challenges head on. And I think as a committee, we welcome the commitment that you've shown in reinventing for growth. the strategy that you've got, and we note your intentions around private sector participation and structural reform, and your comments are duly noted. Thank you very much, DM. I think the biggest enemy of Transnet at this stage is own goals and footfalls, because you can't afford those. I'm just going to mention Prasa's in a little bit of hot soup at the moment, hot water, because of the signalling tender that went pear-shaped, and we're going to, this committee will definitely look at that very carefully, because signalling is probably one of the keys of getting the trains moving as fast as possible, both on the passenger side and on the goods side. As a select committee, our mandate is clear. We're going to exercise robust oversight. We're going to ensure public accountability and obviously support transformative outcomes that benefit all of the South Africans. We will definitely not shy away from asking the tough questions and demanding measurable results, but equally, and I give you the commitment of this committee, that we are committed to engaging constructively with you and offering guidance where appropriate, when needed, and we support your efforts to get to 250 million tons in 3 years from now, I think. Yeah, no, it's a moving target, but we support that. We have been on an oversight visit very briefly in the port of Durban, and we've noted the ambitious efforts there to get, specifically on the container side, to get things going again, and on the automotive side. We're looking forward to our next oversight visit. I think because we don't have a lot of time, we're going to try and pop into the Port of Cape Town to see if everything is right and ready for the season. And hopefully Honourable Peter will get his jacket there. We hope that today's engagement will be the beginning of a transparent and outcomes-based partnership between our committee and Transnet. So we're looking forward to getting regular updates from Transnet and open communication, and above all, the political will to implement the hard reforms necessary to restore Transnet, as it has been in the past, a very reliable pillar in our economy. And that's how we see Transnet. So I would like to appreciate your sincerity and your frankness and your honesty in answering the questions today. It's much appreciated and it's noted. And thank you very much for your time. And we're looking forward to future engagements with yourselves. Honourable members, we just have a little bit of housekeeping to do before we dismiss ourselves. There were 2 sets of minutes circulated to you.
Chairperson, are we granted bail or are we still detained?
Would you? It normally doesn't take long, but you're welcome to excuse yourselves at this stage.
We will leave quietly, Chairperson. And once again, thank you very much.
Help yourself to some free water on the way out.
Sure, thank you.
Honourable members, if we can just quickly go through that. Let's do the report first. That report was the Select Committee on Public Infrastructure, Minister in the Presidency, on the oversight visit to the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa, PRASA, the station modernisation and rail corridor revitalisation projects on the 12th of March 2025. We're presenting this report today for the adoption by this committee. The report has been circulated. Can we go on page 1? Are there any additions, corrections? Honourable Makasini.
Thanks, Chair. I don't see the name of Honorable Peter, and there is because it was part of the meeting. So I can see the apologies, but there is no clarity.
Are we on the same? We're not on the minutes of the meetings. We're on the report.
Oh.
The oversight visit, the PRASA report, and Honourable Peter is there.
I was on the minutes.
Yeah. So can we just do that report quickly, the oversight report? Okay, so we're on page 1. Are there any corrections there? No. Page 2. We're all happy. Page 3, the delegations, our findings and observations. Page 4, honourable members, anything there? No. Page 5. Thank you. Page 6. Nothing there. Page 7, our recommendations are on there. Then page 8. Then page 9. Thank you very much. Can I please get a proposer for this report? Honourable Peter.
I propose to be.
Thank you very much. May I get a seconder for the report, please? Honourable Skierkogel.
I second the report, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. We'll then take this report as duly adopted by this committee, and we will schedule it for presentation, I think, in the House at the next available opportunity. Honourable members, let me go to the minutes of the meeting that we had on the 19th of February. That was the joint oral submissions of the Biodiversity Law Centre and partners with regards to the Marine Oil Pollution Preparedness Response and Cooperation Bill. We're on page 1 of the minutes. Are there any corrections there? Honourable Makasini, that's the one where you said Honourable Peter was, but he is on there. His name is third from the top. Are we on the 19th of February, eh? That minutes. There's two sets, yeah? There's 25 of Feb and there's 19th of Feb. I'm on the 19th of February. Yeah? Okay, page 2. Opening apologies, proceedings. Page 3. The committee deliberations. And page 4, the adoptions of the minutes of the previous meeting on the 4th of December. Good. Can I get a proposer for these minutes as a true reflection? Thank you, Honourable Kaunda.
Move, Chair.
Thank you very much. A seconder?
I second.
Thank you very much, Honourable Makasini. Those minutes are then adopted as a true reflection of the meeting of the 19th of February. We move on to the 26th of February. That was the meeting to amend the Convention on Offences and certain other acts committed on board aircrafts. We also looked at the International Convention on Civil Liability for Bunker Oil Pollution Damage. And we also had a briefing by the Department of Public Works Infrastructure, specifically reference to the Independent Development Trust. On page 1. Is that the one where you were there and we missed you? So can we reflect that Honourable Peter was present in that meeting? That's duly noted. Thank you, Honourable Peter. He wasn't wearing his reflective jacket, so we couldn't see him. Page 2. The opening, the apologies, proceedings. Thank you very much. Page 3. Deliberations. Thank you very much. Page 4. Thank you. Page 5. Honourable members, nearly there. Page 6. Nothing there. And then page 7. Thank you very much. Can we then get a proposer for these minutes as a true reflection? Anybody that was there? Thank you, Honourable Skierkogel.
I propose the minutes is a true reflection, Chair.
Thank you very much. Can we get a seconder for the minutes?
Second, Chair.
Honourable Trezor, thank you very much. Honourable members, I thank you for your time and your patience today. And it was a really good engagement. And thank you, Dr. Clark, for stepping in as our step-in secretary. But thank you also for the very good report that was that's compiled. I think it's a very good true reflection of what happened there. I thank all of you, and I wish you a pleasant lunch hour, and then see you in the House at 2 o'clock. Thank you for your attendance. The meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.